Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a third submission by Jen of her horse Geo. Now this is kind of an interesting ride because in this ride she has started to work the horse bridle-less, not bitless, but bridle-less, and she's actually riding the horse with just a neck strap around the horse's neck. And she is finding that the horse stretches quite nicely in this way, and it seems to be working quite well. All I can say is I'm not sure what's happened between now and the last time I saw her go. In submission number 2, but this horse is certainly going a lot better, with or without a bridle than it was then, and it's much more over its back. It's staying much more consistent in the frame, and this is an interesting alternative. Now, of course, at some point, in order to bring the horse up into a higher level frame and be able to get that consistent contact that sort of completes the energy flow, and you have a bit on the horse that's correctly trained and it's round through the back, you really feel a sense of energy, the wave of the energy flowing through the horse to the bridle in almost a circular kind of way, and that you're able to contain that through a very, very soft contact and contain that energy, kind of like a wave builds. So the wave builds up underneath you, and without that ability to take that little bit of contact in the front, it would be difficult, I think, to go on beyond that. Now, on the other hand, if all you're doing is just wanting to get the horse strengthened, I think this is perfectly fine. It might be a great way to do it if you were, for instance, you have a horse that has been injured by a bit. And as I say, the trouble with the bitless bridles is they're not really any more humane than a bit is, because you can do so much damage to the cartilage of a horse's nose with a bitless bridle. But here she is just riding with a neck strap. Now, however, I wouldn't want to see a whole ring full of people going around with neck straps. I think it would be kind of a dangerous situation, nor could you do this with very young horses. But if you know your horses, as Jen obviously does, and trust them, and she's in an environment that doesn't lend itself, to the horse taking off, and she's in a nice contained ring, I think this would be an interesting way to go. Once again, as long as you know your horses, and it certainly seems to be working well with this horse. And just that at some point, you'd want to put the bridle on the horse. Now, it might be even interesting with this one, as you seem to think the horse is stretching better in this than it was with the bit. Now, once again, it would have been interesting maybe because I haven't seen the horse since its last video, so I don't know how it was or was not going by then, in terms of with bit or without. So I don't have anything else to compare it with, but the horse is certainly going much better today than it was in the last video. It's showing much more strength, and that it's getting more active and more consistent in the stretch. So with bridle or without, this is a better way to go. Now, I would watch, like that turn you just made there was a little too sharp for this horse to see how it kind of lost his balance and threw his head up in the air. So remembering once again, with or without bit or bridle, the whole issue is you still got to go through your corners widely enough that the horse, and make your turns wide enough that the horse can maintain its rhythm over its back. So that's where you always have to be careful. There's no point in doing things that either slow the horse adversely down or are so sharp that that we're basically running them off their feet or something to make it around the corner. But what you're doing here is perfectly fine and acceptable as long as we get him to, he will certainly develop from this frame. Now, what I was going to suggest, it might be interesting for you to just put a bit on the horse without any reins on it and let him carry it while you ride him like this. I'd be interested to see how he reacted to that, if you think that this is working better. And he gives you a couple of moments there in the sitting trot. That's a lot better. He still gets kind of high-headed after that. So again, we'd still like to just see this horse get down and stay there a little more consistently. But once again, compared to the last video that I saw, this is heads and tails better. Once again, right there, a little too sharp a turn. I'd like to see you slow him down just a little bit. And now I don't know if that's a little effect of just not having a bridle at all. But at times it feels to me like the horse is starting to go a little too fast. So once again, I'm not sure, to the degree that you can get, a fine degree of finesse, so to speak, by riding with the neck thing here. But if you can, we want to get it a little slower now. Sometimes he goes too slow. Don't get me wrong. When it really gets hollow, he tends to be really too strong. But I would like to see him get longer and deeper with a little slower step. But he still needs to get just a little bit deeper than he is there, and that's what he seems to just keep popping up. Now, once again, he doesn't pop up as much as he did in the last video. So once again, this is all better than it was. So you're certainly on the right track, and we can certainly cross the bridges about what's going to happen when you bring him up the other way, because you can see that you really you couldn't really affect the height of the pole by riding with a neck strap on. That is, you can't, when it's time to bring them back up, I would think that would be kind of a difficult thing to do. But once again, very interesting. Proving once again, however, and just like we do with babies, when I start babies, I just lunge them in a halter, and almost all of them stretch within 5 minutes or 10 minutes of starting them work. If we start babies like that, it's very easy to train them. And actually, almost all horses that I've ever worked, babies that hadn't been in other people's hands before me and already got them off to a wrong start, usually stretch right away. And of course, I reward that as the first thing when I teach a horse to lunge. So, within a couple of days, that's where they are. So once again, coming back here to this walk, the walk looks a little awkward here, in this bridle like this, in the sense that, if he decides to just look to the left or whatever, there's not much you can do about it. And once again, we can still see that this horse's stomach is a little bit distended there. And he's still a little hollow behind the saddle. So obviously we have a ways to go there. But that walk you ended up there with was certainly much better. Same thing here in the trot, just a little inconsistent. And now in this particular case here, he's getting a little too inactive behind. So once again, but that's also much more an effect of where his head and neck is, as you can see in these videos. Once he goes up, you can see how that adversely affects the back end, because all of a sudden the back end is no longer coming through up to meet the front end. But as soon as he drops down, though, he certainly does, and I think you're going to have. I already see a big improvement in this horse, but what I'm saying is there's some ways to go here. He's pretty hollow there behind the saddle, and he still has a little bit of that pregnant mare look that we want to lose, where his flanks are a bit too distended. And when we see the still pictures of the horse here at the end, you can see there too, that the horse's back is still quite dropped and he has some ways to go. Just always remembering in your mind, it takes about a year or 2 years, really with any horse, to solidify their top line. That's just kind of what it takes, So I think people have to get more into the idea that, think of it as if you were building a race car. You'd have to build the car before you could take it on the track. But unfortunately with horses, people get the car kind of, barely built, and they're trying to go take it out, in a Formula One race, and that's why people run into so much difficulty. So just know that with or without a bridle, this first year or two just takes us ever much its time. Now, if a horse's back is dropped, as this one's back was dropped before you started this work, it's going to take a little bit longer. You can just count on that first year or two of just. Now, some of them change very quickly. I've seen horses that were almost sway back that came back, in just a couple of months. Others that even not so bad, but it took longer. So once again, each one of them is a little bit individual, but our goals are always the same with each one. That is to get them over the back, and then just give them time, to build. This, as I said, once again, we need to build our Formula One car before we can start taking it on the track and driving it. And that's kind of what all this early work in the horse is. It's just, only we can't just go change spare parts. We have to actually build the parts, one little bit at a time, building muscle across the top line. Now this trot's looking good here when you get there. Comes up a little bit once again, hollows, but each time, once again, it gets easier for you to get him down. And I certainly think you're doing a commendable job with this neck strap and the way you're going about this. Now, once again, I'm not advocating that a lot of people try this in that sense. I think these horses quite well, and you're in a nice, safe environment. This isn't something I'd like to see people at riding schools suddenly trying to do, because I think some people might find themselves in trouble, so to speak. But, if you know the horses and you've got a good, quiet environment to do this in, as you have here, then why not give it a try? And once again, he's certainly getting to a good place at times. It still needs to be more consistent than it is, but you're certainly getting there. But, once again, you see a little bit of the difficulty there when it comes down to steering. And this is the problem that you would have, when you would start to go up the levels and have to be able, to make, to demand more of the horse in terms of the size of the circles and the turns and the corners and of course, shoulder ins and these kind of things would be quite difficult. But I think you're really doing a commendable job, as I said here, and he's certainly getting long and low. And where we need him to get, he's getting swinging over at backs at times, just needs to be a little more consistent all the way around. And once again, you see how when he stalls out, how the back end just completely kind of falls out behind the horse there. Really nice there, though. Once he gets there, it looks very good. Right there. And I think once again that'll be a little bit of the problem is getting consistency in that. As it seems like when you have a little difficulty there, like coming down there, it's quite hard to control the frame in those downward transitions. As soon as you try to walk, he just kind of just hollows everything like there, and the head goes up in the air. But once again, we see here, how dipped this horse's back actually is, and how we have quite a little ways to go before the shoulders are going to pull up and be in the right position. So Will Faerber from Art to Ride. Great work again from Jen and Gio. Look forward to seeing you next time.